We have lots of NHL trade rumors and news to take a look at here in today's video. Tonight's trade rumors focusing on teams like the Montreal Canadiens, Vancouver Canucks, Edmonton Oilers, Dallas Stars, San Jose Sharks, and the Nashville Predators. Plus, we have more news from the NHL waiver wire. The NHL has announced one of the other quarter-century teams this time for the Calgary Flames, and a few other injury and roster updates as well. Plus, Gauthier comes to Philadelphia and really getting reamed by the fans. We'll discuss that and everything else coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in tonight's video. First up, I'm going to start with some more news today from the NHL waiver wire. We do have defenseman Ty Smith of the Carolina Hurricanes, who has been placed on waivers for the purpose of being assigned to their minor league affiliate. Ty Smith actually is a player that, in my opinion, I really thought he would be a regular NHL defenseman by now in his career. He was drafted fairly highly. At one point was a captain for Canada at the lower levels. Had good leadership skills, was a pretty solid defenseman, at least looked upon in junior and stuff. And it hasn't quite worked out for him at the NHL level. So we'll see. I imagine he's probably not going to get picked up, but we'll have to wait and see tomorrow afternoon. Some other roster moves and injury updates around the league. New York Islanders updates. Ilya Sorokin is missing tonight's game against Utah. He's out with an illness. He's under the weather. And Romanov also out. He's out day to day with some sort of a minor injury. Montreal today had another overtime game, the fourth consecutive overtime game against the Dallas Stars. They've had a good run lately against some good clubs. Yet another overtime game, but they did lose this one in a shootout. But Patrick Laine and David Savard both back in the Habs lineup. Laine scored yet another power play goal. Of course, that's Laine's specialty, is the big booming slap shot or snap shot in some cases, but usually the slapper on the face-off circle from the Ovechkin office on the power play. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think all of his goals this year since he's come back are on the power play. A little bit of a one-trick pony, but it's still a trick that many players struggle to do. So good infusion there for Montreal. It's another pretty good game overall. With Dallas, they were tied 1-1. Ended up going to overtime. Wasn't a ton of chances in overtime. A few flurries of excitement. And then it went to the shootout where the Stars and Jake Ottinger pulled off the win. So Montreal gets 1 point at the very least, which will keep them hanging around here in the mix. And they've, like I said, in the last 10, 11 games, they've had a lot of points and a lot of victories, and they've had 4 straight overtime games. So, they're getting at least 1 point out of that. In San Jose today, we got word that Jake Wallman and Carl Grundstrom have been activated. Will be back in the lineup, and Klim Kostin and newly acquired Andrei Kovalenko has been moved to injured reserve. So they will be out for at least a 7-day period. As I mentioned, the NHL continues to announce their quarter-century teams for all 32 NHL franchises. Today we got word on who they selected for the Calgary Flames. The Calgary Flames' first team of the quarter century here is led by, unfortunately, recently deceased Johnny Gaudreau. Of course, Johnny was a huge part of the Flames, arguably, of all the players that played there for an extended period of time. I think during his era, he was, definitely their best player for somebody who played there for so long and had so many, top exciting moments, so many goals and assists. Like, he was phenomenal for the Flames. Definitely deserves to be there. Joining Johnny Gaudreau in the first team is Jerome Iginla and Matthew Tkachuk. Obviously, 2 great Flames as well. Iginla played majority of his time in Calgary. Did have a flurry of other teams at the end of his career there, but certainly played the bulk of it there. Of course, Matthew Tkachuk, along with Gaudreau, were top line mates there for a few years. Unfortunately, Tkachuk never played as long in Calgary I think his fans would have liked. On the back end, you get Mark Giordano and Robin Regeer with the D-Corps, so they certainly well-deserving. Gio was a long-time captain. Regeer was a long-time solid D-man back there. And Mika Kiprusoff, who's probably one of the more underrated goalies, I think, of his era. Certainly deserves to be in that spot as well. The second team for the Calgary Flames quarter-century team includes current general manager and former centerman Craig Conroy, current captain Michael Backlund, and Sean Monahan. Obviously, Monahan had a long stretch there of several 25, 30-goal seasons. Rasmus Anderson on the back end, and Dion Phaneuf, of course, who went on to become the a bit of a scapegoat in Toronto, was the team captain after that significant trade between the two Canadian franchises. Jacob Markstrom gets the nod in goal between the pipes. So some pretty solid Flames players that have had a major contribution to their franchise here in the first quarter century of the 2000s. So good exercise here that the NHL is doing. I'm glad to see this. Lots of fun as it gets announced. As I mentioned, Cutter Gauthier made his return to Philadelphia tonight as the Anaheim Ducks visited the Philadelphia Flyers. And man, oh man, was he getting the business from the Flyers players and the fans. I know he had words a few times with Travis Konechny. At one point, Konechny, I believe, if I could read his lips properly, said that he's going to fight him. He promises him that. I know the fans were chanting, lots of profanity at Cutter. I've seen clips of them, a lot of the FU Cutter. I heard about, obviously, he was traded for Jamie Drysdale. They were getting on him with a Jamie's better chant. They were really giving him the business. And as Travis Konechny said post-game, he's like, a lot of people don't understand what it's like to be a Philadelphia Flyer and how good it can be. And you don't really get that sometimes until you're here. And he said that ultimately it's Cutter's loss, that he's, not going to be a Flyer and, requested to be a trade. And to be honest, like I said before, Cutter Gauthier and his agent went about this, I think, in a scummy kind of way, getting out of Philadelphia. The fact that they wouldn't really ever explain themselves, not that he's required to, but you got to understand that if you're going to be playing or drafted to a fairly big market and a passionate fan base market like this, and you want out and you don't come, there's really no story, confirming why you don't want to be there, they're going to turn on you. And it just makes it look, kind of worse, right? It's just a bad situation. So at the end of the day, I don't think Cutter Gauthier is ever going to be overly welcome in Philadelphia. The Flyers are going to certainly continue to make it hard on them. They routed the Ducks, and I believe the final, if I'm not mistaken, was 6-0, or at least that's the score the last I seen it. As I sat down to record this video, I'm not even sure that game was completely done. It was late in the third, though. So Cutter Gauthier's return to Philly did not go so well from the scoreboard or from the fan base or from his, not that he was really ever teammates with those guys, but, from his former organization there. Lots of rumors around the NHL today. Some of this data comes from Dave Pagnotta, who put out a big update earlier. And then, of course, we had Elliot Friedman's Saturday Headlines segment tonight on Hockey Night in Canada. We'll start with some of the info from Pagnotta on Montreal. Of course, we know that the Montreal Canadiens are, I think, surprising a lot of people, even themselves to some degree. I know a lot of them are saying that they are, felt like they could be in the mix for playoffs this year, and it's lots of runway left, so there's no guarantee they're going to make it. They're in an absolute dogfight with a number of teams. So they got their work cut out for them, but, like I said, they keep winning and keep doing well and keep hanging around, so we'll see how it goes. But Pagnotta is reporting that, they're definitely going to remain patient here with their pending unrestricted free agents. They still have one slot where they can retain salary, and that players like David Savard, Christian Dvorak, and Jake Evans, still a decent chance we could see trades, regardless of where they're at in the standings. Pagnotta was saying that, it's expected David Savard might be able to fetch a first-round pick, and I don't see Montreal turning that down just because they might squeak in as a wildcard team. When it comes to Jake Evans, we know the reports from Pierre LeBrun the other day kind of indicated that, which I think are still very much the case. Like we've heard early indications that there's some interest to talk contract, but we know that Evans is going to be in line for a significant raise on his pay, and Montreal is going to probably want a bit of a break on that raise to keep him around. They do have some young players that can kind of give them a similar type of game that they've been developing, like Kapanen and Beck. And, they have to determine here if signing him is the best thing for the right price. So, again, just because Montreal is in the playoff mix doesn't mean they're not still going to do the right thing for the future of the club. And they're being patient right now because they probably don't want to make moves too early. They want to keep, obviously, the success going, make sure the team has this chance to put more wins together as possible. And they'll make a decision on some of these guys closer to the deadline. Like I said, with Evans, if they can get him on a contract that they really like, maybe he doesn't go. Dvorak, I honestly don't know that there's going to be a lot of interest in him. The key one here for me is Savard. especially if they retain money. Maybe they can get a first, and maybe they do that deal regardless. But time will tell. We'll see. The Dallas Stars are going to be another interesting team here to watch as well. Of course, they played the Montreal Canadiens tonight. The latest intel from them, from Dave Pagnotta, is they're definitely going to be wanting to add multiple pieces. They're looking to probably add a top 6 forward and possibly a top 4D. They feel like they're very much in an open window here to contend for the Stanley Cup. And with Tyler Seguin being out until, he's not going to be back. Probably they estimate if the Dallas Stars were to make a deep playoff run, let's say they went all the way to the finals, he might at the earliest come back conference final, maybe round 2. It's very unlikely he's going to be available for the first round. Even the second round might be doubtful. So they're going to be able to spend his money to in an LTIR category here to be able to add to this team. Ownership is totally fine with them spending well above the cap. They've got to go ahead that way. So look for Dallas to be aggressive and add, like I said, a top 6 forward if they can, and a significant addition on their blue line. We've heard lots of things before. I think one of the names they could be linked to was a guy like Brock Nelson. I know he was linked to Dallas, Minnesota. But again, the Islanders and Lou Lamoriello spoke to the media just in the last day or two, and he said that they're staying the course. They believe in this team. And yeah, they're not in a playoff spot, but they're still in the mix, and they're not really going to do a lot. And they're not really focused on all that. I'm like, give me a break. You're still way out of you're not significantly out of the race, but you're still pretty low in the standings. You've been mediocre to not, to at best for a couple of years. This team needs a retooling, and some of these pending UFAs need to go so you can get some new fresh blood on this team. I'm sure Islander fans are frustrated to hear that, but that's one of the names I think Dallas could be very interested in. But again, time will tell. We will see, but expect Dallas to make multiple moves if they're able to. San Jose is certainly got an interesting situation as well. As much as they've been a more fun, more competitive team this year, they're still far out of the contention for playoffs. And some names there to watch are also, getting either pending UFAs or close to it, including Granlund, CC, and Ferraro are the names to watch there. Ferraro's generated interest for the last couple of years. Hasn't been moved here as of yet. But certainly lots of interest there. Cody Cece's on an expiring contract. I know we heard comments from Cece the other day saying that he would be content to stay and consider re-signing. He's enjoyed his time there so far. But again, we'll see. A lot of teams are going to be looking for experienced defensemen to add as depth, and he just brings that experience. Granlund, on the other hand, I think San Jose has some interest to sign him, but again, he might be overachieving, getting a bigger payday right now. That might not be something that they want to do. So 3 players with the Sharks to watch. The Oilers, like the Dallas Stars, are going to have a pretty good opportunity through LTIR to add to this team. Like I said yesterday, we talked about Evander Kane having another surgery, which is with an up to 8-week recovery on his knee. He is going to be out. I would suspect he's not going to be able to play in the regular season, and I would also suspect that maybe even the beginning of the playoffs might not be available. So again, with that extra money that they have, definitely they want to add, probably on the blue lines where they're going to start. But I know there's been some wondering about in the forward group too, with guys like Jeff Skinner not producing to the level they want. Even Victor Arvidsson's been a little quieter this year than they were hoping for. Do they have to figure out a way to add a little bit more scoring? That's going to be a tough question. But at the end of the day, one name that they have been linked to is Marcus Pettersson of the Pittsburgh Penguins in the back end. I wouldn't completely rule out Stan Bowman looking back to his old club at the Blackhawks, and maybe a player like Connor Murphy. I think that's reasonable to expect that as well. But the Oilers are definitely going to be looking to use Kane's money to add one way or another. Big update from Elliot Friedman tonight from Nashville on Ryan O'Reilly. Some speculation on O'Reilly, whether or not he could be moved. There's been a few rumors out there that teams are inquiring on his services. I know there was a big one saying that the Leafs would be very interested in getting him back, and I believe that to be the case. But just because a team is interested and there's a rumor floating around that they've inquired doesn't mean a deal is going to happen, of course. And Friedman is saying that even though Ryan O'Reilly signed his contract and has no trade protection involved in it, that the Predators are not going to treat things that way and move him to any old team, that they're going to treat this like he does have trade protection. The fact that he's so extremely respected around the league, that he's going to be given that respect and probably consulted on any deal. For starters, if there is going to be one, it's going to have to be a deal that Nashville is very much excited about for the future, that they feel like they can't say no. And, at the same time, he's somebody that they view as being a part of the solution to get things turned around there in Nashville. He's on a 4-year deal, even though this year's kind of gotten off the rails and unfortunately likely not going to be fixable, at least you wouldn't think, for the Predators this year. But at the same time, he could stick around and be a part of that solution. So it's interesting to say. Either way, if Ryan O'Reilly is going to be traded out of Nashville, what Friedman's telling us is that the Predators are probably going to talk to him about it first, make sure he's good with it, give him the respect that they feel he's earned, even though he doesn't have the trade protection. And it's going to have to be a phenomenal trade, or they're just going to keep him. It's just that simple. In Vancouver, the new intel there from Elliott tonight was that we know that the Canucks are taking calls on Miller and Pettersson. They had a big win tonight against the Leafs after being delayed as well by their flight into Toronto was severely delayed because of bad weather in the United States. They were stuck in Raleigh, North Carolina for an extended time. Got in really, really late today, way later than usual, but they still showed up and shut the Leafs out. And Kevin Lankinen had a big performance there. And we know that Pettersson and Miller are both on the block, but doesn't mean that either player for sure is going to get traded. One thing that Elliott said tonight that was new was that the Canucks are not opposed to trading one of those players within the Western Conference. Usually teams, especially with bigger names, they don't want to trade them in the division or within the conference, and they try to do that with other divisions or conference, and that appears to be something that Vancouver doesn't really care too much about. And if the right deal comes from a Western Conference team, they feel very much prepared to do that. I also wonder, hearing that from Elliott, if that's almost not, something that's been fed to him to make the offers better. Because if the offers are not good enough, they're not going to trade either player, even though there's all the drama and the speculation about what is, going on inside the locker room and behind closed doors. They're not going to make a trade. They're going to hope that these guys can be grown men and deal with it until they find a way to make the team as good or better down the road. And clearly, Miller and Pettersson are such big parts of winning a trade and getting it right is complicated, and they want to take their time and make sure they do that if they're going to pull it off. So at the same time, like I said, not opposed to moving a deal within the Western Conference, but I wonder if that is intel fed to Elliott because the deals are not coming in good enough, and they're just trying to increase the interest levels here. So again, the belief out there is that I think more teams are interested in acquiring Pettersson because of his age and potential upside, whereas it seems like the Canucks, if they had to pick, might be more inclined to move Miller given his age and where things are at. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting scenario. Lots of drama in Vancouver, and it's been dominated the headlines, and I know a lot of people are kind of getting a bit nauseated talking about it because it's been such a big thing. It's in the news pretty much every day, and until it gets sorted out, it's a little bit of new intel, but nothing too crazy or significant. So then let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll talk further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.